right, friends, welcome back to Words Their Way Wednesday. I'm a little bit behind on this one. We have just had a crazy week with lots of busyness. Actually a little bit different too, because my husband had taken off for my birthday. So I am all kinds of mixed up. I'm sure anybody that understands the mixed up feeling in that week between Christmas and New Year's understands how I'm feeling, because it is just like if you don't have your normal routine, you're like, what day is it? What time is it? Where am I? So anyway, it's been that kind of week, but here we are. And we're going to talk about, the new letters that I would be introducing this week, and I have started with my kindergartners, are k, 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 k. That's how I'm introducing that motion. K, k, k. And n, n, n. So saying no with the n sound. And this is, sorry, puppy dogs and children. Anyway, so I would introduce those sounds, and then the same process of identifying and then producing the sound on their own. We are at this moment in the identifying stage, and I'm going to pause in a minute. So this will be our next book. We started already doing our book. Book. So we're going to do our book. And I love them. They're very simple. They're very sweet. There's not really a whole lot to them. It's really just they're collecting the things in the box. But one of the things I will say is, why did they use that for their box? What does it start with? So that kind of helps them to think about it. And then the last page has all of the different things that they find with the r sound. So then I ask them to find their favorite. They oftentimes will draw a picture. I've used some different coloring pages as well that really highlight what starts with that letter. This is the first grouping that doesn't have a vowel attached, but with that group of letters, they can make a lot of words. So I've already started on word work, and I'm going to be showing a video of that in just a moment. One of our word work from this week was building a word with your letters on a pan, and I found little spatulas at the Dollar Tree that they use to flip their letters. So another thing that I try to do when I am introducing the letters and working with the letters, and honestly they need so much practice and so much repetition that really you can stick with those letters for a while, and then working with building that word, stretching the sounds so that they make a word. Those are all concepts that need to be repeated again and again and again. So as many things as you can find that are interesting to them. So I started out doing this with my oldest when he was 4, which is 11 years ago at this point. And I thought about all the things he was interested in. So one of the activities that I would do was a Band-Aid, and he would put a Band-Aid on a man, and there were 3 spots, and he would make words with that Band-Aid. So that was one of the things as I was introducing word families or letter patterns. So IT was a word family, IGHT, different things like that. I would do different things that went along with that doctor theme. Like he would have, I would have those tongue depressors, and I would have the word family on it, and we would put it on his tongue, and then he would use it to read his prescription. So we did different things like that children are already interested in, and it's always best to use what your child's interests are. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit at the end as well, talking about how to deal with introducing those complex sounds to older children that are struggling with reading, because then you really need to hone in on what is your level of interest and what can I do, what activity can I introduce that will make this more interesting to you and also not be like kiddish, because as they get older they don't want to do the little kid things. So here I am getting ready to put the letters together to make a word, and I'm very intentional on how we read those words so they understand that each part makes a sound and that all those parts contribute to the word. So we take the spatula, we put them under each letter, say their sound, and then slide it along the bottom and have the word at the end of it. So slide those letters together and make a word. Another thing that I'm fairly intentional about is just changing one letter at a time so that they can see that each letter has an important part in making that word, and that if you just change one letter, it makes another word. So I might start with sit and move to sat, then I might move to mat, and then to mit, and then to sit, and then to sip, so that there are many different combinations, but they see that just one change makes it a different word. Huh? And typically speaking, when we are talking about this age, I'm not as much focused on writing lots of letters and words, but in making them. So if they can form them by using the tiles they have with the knobs, or they can form them by stamping or any other way, then that will be the mode of choice, and we'll just work on fine motor skills. So here you can see they have those little tongs, and those are working to pick up the knobs on their letters so that they can work on their fine motor skills. Now, Asher is a little bit behind those fine motor skills that they're using, so he has his own way, which you see here, where he picks up the letter and uses the spatula on the other side. And that's great, and working towards developing those muscles as well. And you're about to see an example of best laid plans. Timothy is just not having it, and that's okay. And sometimes we need to change our plans and do what's best for the child in the moment, which I did here. So I hope you enjoyed watching us interact and build those words. I haven't included my older children as much because we are doing kind of a different way of teaching them. They are not as in need of activities and moving around as much as that's a wonderful teaching concept, and it's a wonderful knowledge and way to teach. They are very happy to sit down and do book work or do computer work or whatever else. So they're able to do their work a little bit differently. So I haven't included as many of those, but I think we are going to start to work with those as well. Right now, their level is really just reading. I have a wonderful Bible that I can link below as well, called my Early Reader Bible, and I've used it with all of my children. It introduces the Dolch sight words. It works it's like an actual early reader. Sometimes books will say early reader, and they're not really. They have pretty complex words and complex spelling patterns. And so it's really difficult and frustrating for a child that is really trying to read to see this easy reader or early reader, and it's really not. So this one is true to what it says. It is easy to read, easy to decode, and it's introducing, I think it's like 200 Dolch sight words. So that is a fantastic resource. And again, I'll try to link that below. But one of the things that I had to do, especially with my child that first struggled reading as an older child, was come up with things that worked for him, for his personality. And one of the things that he would do to escape schoolwork was to go outside and play basketball. So we turned it into a game. I had my cards with my spelling patterns on them, and whatever we were going through, I have another book that I used with him that was fantastic about the different spelling patterns, and then we would read books concerning those spelling patterns. We would spell those words. There were a lot of ways to incorporate those. Sorry, I had kids to get out to Scouts. My husband had gotten home, thankfully, just in time to take them. That is my favorite, when somebody else can be the Uber. Anyway. So I would take him outside, we would play basketball, and I'd say, if you get the spelling pattern right, you get 2 shots. If you get it wrong, you get 1. And then it was like, if you got however many shots, you won. So that was a really, we have lots of kids, so we have lots of interruptions. Anyway, so he did really well with that. And so anything that your child is interested in, another thing he was interested in was throwing the football. So we would do the same kind of thing, throw the football to the spelling pattern, again, using the trampoline, using sidewalk chalk just on the sidewalk, run to that. Anything active for him really made a big difference. So that is a tip for that. And then the 3 sounds I'm going to talk about today are our sound. So that's ER, IR, and UR. And what I typically do is show a car driving along and say, okay, and so we will kind of tell the story that that car was driving way too fast and they had to slam on their brakes and say, is a really difficult spelling pattern for kiddos to grab because they hear that sound and they think it's just one letter. So I often, when I'm talking about spelling, or really it's to spell, because they can read it, but it's just the spelling of it that's kind of tricky when they're writing it. So when they're writing it, I will say 2-letter and then we talk about where we might see that spelling pattern. So oftentimes the ER pattern is at the end of a 2-syllable word. So then we talk about that. These are 2 or more syllable words, I should say. So you'd say, okay, so the ER spelling comes at the end of a 2 or more syllable word. And then you'd want to practice that and look for that in different books that you're reading. Anytime that you see one of these spelling patterns and you can kind of talk about it as they're reading is a really good thing for them to be able to do. So that's what I would do with that. And I'm also going to put up the ER, the IR, and the UR and how I draw them. And typically it's just like a car that's gotten into a car crash. And so we talk about that. And again, when I see it when we're reading, that's the motion I'll make first, and then I'll say, do you remember the sound? The nice thing about those three is that it actually is like phonetically correct. So it's not as much of an R controlled spelling pattern as AR or OR would be, although OR has the long. AR is a tricky one, but then you can kind of, we'll get into what I use with that in the next video, but anyway, ER, IR, UR, another great thing would be to have a composition notebook where you collect those words whenever you come across them, you write them in the right column, ER, IR, UR. Anyway, the ER, IR, UR, tricky, but if you continue to work with them, they will get easier and easier. And again, the sound for all three of those works well. I do bring in that sound with my OR sound, so I'll go into that in that video, but same motion. So anyway, I hope that you have a blessed week. I hope that these things help. These little tips and tricks help you to enjoy teaching your child to read, and that they are able to have fun in the process as well. Bye, friends.